Do you yearn for travel that involves outdoor adventure and learning? I do. I also have a passion for all things farming and agriculture. I've traveled to exotic jungles to learn about growing chocolate. I even once owned my own organic vegetable and sunflower farm. And now I'm planning my journey back to agriculture. Agritourism, defined as travel that involves some type of agricultural experience. Agritourism is all about entertaining. But the marketing strategist in me knows that at its core, agritourism is really about educating, and education affects change. My future farm needs to deliver a profound experience to all of its visitors. It needs to educate people about food, health, and climate. Join me to learn from experienced agritourism farmers and entrepreneurs and help me build my future farm strategy. And who knows, maybe one day soon you'll find yourself in a tropical jungle cutting open cacao pods with a machete, or savoring an outdoor plant-to-plate community dinner with 100 guests at a farm in Illinois. So let's tap into the agritourist in you. We've had the opportunity to explore so many different corners of agriculture, but this conversation brings us into a part of the food system that is both incredibly visible and often deeply misunderstood: beekeeping. I sat down with Evan Raseska of Boston Honey Company, a family-run business that has grown from a single backyard hive into a multi-state operation. What I found especially compelling is how this story reflects something we see across agriculture. Growth doesn't happen in a straight line. It's shaped by curiosity, by necessity, and by a willingness to adapt when conditions change. From shifting climates to changing forage and the realities of pollination, Evan shares what it really takes to build and sustain a business around bees. As you listen, I invite you to think a little differently about something as simple as honey, because behind it is a complex system of bees, land, farmers, and decisions that all play a role in what ends up in the jar. And as always, it's a reminder that the more we understand about where our food comes from, the more connected we become to the people and processes behind it. This is Jen Ross, your Agri-Tourist Podcast host. Please leave us a review, subscribe, and share this podcast. Enjoy my conversation with Evan. Hey, Evan.
Hey, Jen. How's it going?
Good. How are you?
Not too shabby.
First, why don't you just tell me a little bit about your personal background, and then obviously coming into the business, and tell me a little bit about the history of the business. So who are you, Evan?
Okay, that's who am I? That's a good
Loaded question, huh?
So I guess to start with a little about me is, I'm Evan Raseska. I'm Andy's son. And I didn't have a choice in this. I think if you go to my website, you'll see one of the earliest photos of a strapping young man, my father, at the time, and a little child, no more than 3 years old, either laughing and or crying. The depiction is hard to tell, but that's me. So I grew up into the honey and beekeeping and farming world since a very early age. That was not my father's background, but he went into it with both feet, jumping head first. And so I kind of grew up into the business. So for me, me growing up was synonymous with the business growing. So okay. I've seen every single stage of this business, from the small hobby, as I was a kid, kind of growing up with a small beekeeping hobby in the backyard, to it becoming a part-time business. I'm going to my teenage years. Instead of chores, I do work, right? Instead of going to hanging out with a bunch of people with like the rowdy downtown crossing area, or going to the coffee shops and being a punk in town, I was transferring nukes and installing packages of bees and harvesting honey and working in our garage, in our little workshop. And then as I got into college years, it was running one of our first storefronts, which is more for like equipment and just bee sales. And then after college, we opened our first retail store. Okay. And around then, I was also doing deliveries for the business. I'd been going to different stores and being very, very active. So I grew up into the business. So for me, I'm pretty much tied to every integral part of the business, but also it's just our story is something that I'm so passionate about because it's my story, because it's how I grew up. And every single,
Yeah,
it's not just, hey, you grew up onto the family farm. It was, I grew up as the business grew up. And, now the business it's been a full-fledged business full time for 26 years. Um, and I was in the fields when I was just 3, 4 years old. So it's been a
just
minute.
back me up. What made your dad make this? Like, what interested him about this back when you were 3 years old?
So I think to get into that, why it interests him so much is give a little backstory of my father. And his background is pretty varied, right? So when he was a kid, I think he was like 16 or 17, a little before then. He had his first full-time job and it was his own. He was working for himself, right? And he's always worked for himself. So he was painting houses when he was a teenager. And then early on, he was apprenticed as a chef. And he became very, very successful in his role as being a chef. And one day he was looking at maybe opening his own restaurant. And so, but while he's in the cooking world, he met my mom. And, when you're in the culinary world and working in kitchens, you don't get to see people all that much. And he's like,
Yeah.
I want to spend more time with my wife. So he started painting houses again, ran his own crew. And around 1993, or no, 1994, 1995, while he was painting a house in, I think it was Newton, he noticed that there were some beehives and he's like, I'm interested. I want to work with those. So it was the first hive in like, I think it was like 1996, his first beehive in the backyard. And he was hooked. And that's what got the hobby started. That's what the passion and the drive started because he's always been very ambitious in terms of all of his career goals, and just how he is as a person. When you meet my dad, he's a lot. He's a lot. He's a very intense individual, and so is my mom, and that's totally normal. I'm the more laid back one. So I have to temper that, but someone's got to balance it out, right? But they are
Yes.
they are so passionate about just going and going and going. Like they're nonstop, all gas, no brakes. And that's how beekeeping took off for him. He's like, I want this all the way. And my mom's like, I'll support you. She had a different job at the time. She's like, hey, we'll just, you're dropping the painting, you're dropping housing, you're dropping all this. You're focused on bees. Well, I'll take care of everything for now and just take it from there. And it took off. And so I think a few years after that, my mom left her role and joined the company as well. We've been
Oh,
growing ever
wow. So
since. Yep.
it's really a family,
All family, all in.
all
Yeah.
family business. So what what do you think it was about bees and honey? Because obviously you said he seemed to have an entrepreneurial nature about him,
Yeah.
an independent, that's definitely you either many times you have that or you don't. The culinary. What was it about bees and honey though? Like, did you think?
It was two things. It wasn't just the bees. Obviously, it's a creature, right? And as you
Yes.
learn bees, there's the relationship you have with them. But I think for him, the initial catch was being outside, right?
Okay.
And food, right? Honey.
Yep.
He once again, culinary is his passion. He loves food. With this, not just like eating it. Obviously, I'm a big eater. I love all the food they cook, right? But he loves the process behind every dish. And so for him, he's like, I'm creating a dish of honey and how can I make it the best it can be? And so he was always very passionate on sourcing and producing local honey. And
Okay.
Massachusetts being our home, that was what always drove us to do this, and be so locally focused. And for him, it was just being outside. It's working with a fascinating creature as he learned to love bees and figure them out, and sometimes not figure them out, which is more often not that bees do their own thing. Um, it came alongside with the honey and just all the stuff we came along with it. And that was just where his journey began.
So, okay, many people have are they get into this as a hobby and then they dabble and they sell their honey at farmers markets or they have their hives at some farms. You guys have taken it to a different level. What is different about that? Like, what do you think? Why is your business so different and bigger, I guess, than some other bee company, bee honey companies out there? What is the difference? It sounded like your parents seemed to have, like you said, a drive about them. What was going on there, and what do you think they did differently than some other companies?
I think it was a mixture of one. It's timing. Timing was good for when we were doing what we were doing. And once again, you talk about the drive, right? That my parents both came, so not to get too humble on their beginnings, but both my parents did not come from any form of money or like any type of background there. They were on, they pulled themselves up by their bootstraps in a lot of ways. I won't get too detailed into that. That's their own personal stories, but they didn't have it easy. And so for them, they want to provide for me, right? And so
Right.
they're like, we're growing our son, but also we're gonna grow our family, and we're gonna grow this business so we can take care of him and take care of ourselves. Um, but also my dad was just so, those early years, he was just, his head was in the bees. And so we kept growing, and it was exponential growth year over year. And he went full all in. So I'm talking, he went to like not the full on large conferences we have today, but regional meetups with other beekeepers and smaller operations. He was talking to the inspectors. He was very just into his reading. I have got hundreds, if not maybe probably 1,000. I have hundreds of magazines about bees and books about bees here in our offices where he has read every single one of them. Uh, and so he went all in mentally of how can I grow our bees? And then the business came after as well, right? It's growing our operations and then
Right.
also focusing on, my earliest memories are farmers markets with my mom, right? Farmers markets with my mom was kind of like our thing. Um, my dad didn't go to them as much, but I remember the early days when we were driving around in a really small van that we had, and I'd be riding shotgun right in the back, and my mom was like, "Hey, you're gonna put stickers on the jar lids," and I was labeling the jar
Yep.
lids, and it was just they were tenacious in trying to find new accounts, new businesses to grow the business, and they were very,
Right.
very. Once again, it goes back to that drive. They were hungry. They are still hungry. They're always hungry.
Right.
And and today we still haven't stopped growing. I mean, we do, it started out as just local honey back in those days, but then my dad's like, all right, I need to do pollination. Let me do pollination locally. And he learned things the hard way. He never took anyone else's, word for it. So I remember when we were doing cranberry pollination, and he's like, I think this is the last time I'm doing this. The bees aren't looking strong enough after this. And, it would just change every year in terms of he would always learn something new from his mistakes. He learned always the hard way. I got to learn the easy way because I got to learn from his mistakes. I got to watch him make them, so I didn't have to make as
Right.
many. But I still have made plenty of terrible mistakes and learned a lot from them, right? And that's the fun part is there's a lot of room to learn here. Um, so there's always that growth and moving forward, and that's how we kind of got along that way. And so for him, it was just honey production, selling honey, and then also it's like, hey, let's do pollination. Hey, we can sell bees too. And then my mom, as the more she got involved, we started to expand our product line. And so she makes all of our candles, all of our screen creams, our lip balms. And we kind of fully expand our product line all ourselves while still pushing the business and the bee growth. And then we just kept pushing.
So that's what, give me a perspective on what the business looks like today. Like you have hives at several
Yep.
locations, correct?
So we cover three different states primarily. Massachusetts is our home. This is our home base. We have our farm stand here in Holliston, and then, which is new. We've built this about 6 years ago, but we're operating out of a number of warehouses for years. Um, Basically, we had like a whole collection of warehouses, and we just all of our operations spread between them, just kind of all commingling. Now it's all under one roof, at least here in Massachusetts. We have two other roofs. We have our first big expansion was down to Georgia, where we have a
Oh,
full-fledged farm down there. The reason why Georgia was our first expansion was I think we did that move. I'm trying to recall. I think it was around 2011, 2012 when we first started moving down to Georgia, because winters were just getting too rough. We were seeing our losses go up to unacceptable percentages and unacceptable levels that were no longer sustainable. We were seeing forage for honeybees being cut back. We lost our third crop of honey. So normally,
right.
and back in the day, who wants to hear that saying? But around 2010, 2009, we would have three crops of honey. And we lost a lot of forage. And I don't want to like be too hammer on the nail here, but purple loosestrife, which is an invasive species of plant, always provided a very much needed boost of pollen and nectar for the honeybees going into the winter.
Okay.
And we lost that crop for the most part, and that contributed to us trying to spend more money on, pollen patties, which is an all natural like protein source for bees.
Okay.
Um, and it's compounded too. And then also having to feed them, which is, feeding bees sugar, water, any type of syrup is kind of like feeding yourself with a fast food. I'm not going to use brand names, right?
Yeah.
But if you eat a lot of fast food, it's gonna add up, right? You eat it once in a while, it's not going to kill you, but it does contribute to like if you eat that for a week straight, I mean, and come across someone with a cold, your immune system's not going to be all there. You're going to get sick and you have issues. And it's the same with the bees, right? If they're not eating healthy, they're going to have problems. So for us, Georgia was our first move. And then we expand to upstate New York as well. Because one, there's good honey territory up there. It's good Northeast harvest. It's a nice light honey that we use for people who buy it for bulk honey, people who buy it in bakeries. Some people also just like the flavor of it. It's a lot lighter than the Massachusetts wildflower honey.
Okay.
Um, but also we've gone up there for pollination. So now we have three states that we are settled in, right, for any duration of a long period of time. But then now we've also done further pollination contracts. So down in Georgia, we do blueberries. Up here in the Northeast, it's mostly apples, and then we'll do some smaller crops as well with farms that we already have agreements with. Like we'll do strawberries and some blueberries, but it's nothing like a really big focus here. We do apples.
Okay.
And then we do California as well. And so
Oh,
California wrapped
wow.
up a little well. Yeah. So California is a much
Well,
bigger adventure.
yes.
California. So I don't go to California. I don't get to sit on the beaches. Our
Yes.
bees are no, no. I'm a redhead if you can't tell, and I turn red, and I'm not a fan of that part. I do love the sand, but however, the bees go on we call a little trip, and so they'll make the journey by themselves without us. They go through another company that will transport them, bring them to different farms and orchards. In California for almond pollination. And then
Wow.
once that contract wraps up, they get hauled back. And the cool thing is we get to track them on our phones while they do it. We have like a mobile app.
That's amazing.
And so it has geolocator trackers within the colonies and the pallets of the hives, so we can track them if someone decides to take them, or if they get lost on the way. If they get, sometimes with some of those drops, they can do it late at night, and sometimes when they leave, a few weeks later, they're like, "Oh, we forgot a pallet over there," and we lose, four colonies of bees. It happens. People forget where things are. They're like, "Oh, I forgot where that put that." It's happened. One year we just lost a pallet of bees, but hey, it's okay. It happens. This year, all the bees made their way back safe and sound. And right now, we're making what's called nucleus colonies. So we shortly call them nukes. So we sell bees for a living as well. So we sell honey,
Okay.
bees, and pollination services, but also honey related products such as candles and beeswax, skin creams and lip balms and soaps, right? So we do a full kind of anything that is related to the honeybee, we do and we sell, and we support it.
So if I'm a hobbyist and I want to get some bees,
You
I
can buy from
can.
us.
Now, I know the gentleman when I had a farm here on Long Island, and he I remember when he had his bees, he was getting them like there were Russian bee, like they were from other countries, and some of them were more aggressive than others. Have you like are your bees sourced, or are you kind of have you like taken a certain type of bee and now that's kind of your bee that you're multiplying? Like, how does that work? Are you constantly sourcing from different areas that there are certain types of bees that do the work that you need?
So that's a really good question. We, so I love that you said mentioned the Russian bees. That made me laugh
Well,
a
I
little bit
just
because
remember when he used to talk about this, and they were really aggressive, like because he had some issues during winters.
they
We
are
had,
they
yeah.
are a little more aggressive.
I
Um,
mean, I'm
yeah,
not trying to stereotype.
no, it's so there's different stocks of bees, right? And there's bee stocks and there's a lot of characteristics that go along with them. And so for me, I am most beekeepers here in Massachusetts or New England, or actually just most folks here in the United States are familiar with one of the most common ones, which are the Italians. Italians, which is
Okay.
they're the most popular in the U.S. They're for the most part very non-temperamental. They're very gentle. Um, they are really good for brood rearing, so that means they're good for bees, right? They're
Okay.
producing massive amount of bees, which is good for honey production. And so for beekeepers who sell bees, right, Italians are usually the go-to. You want a stock that can multiply very rapidly. You want to have solid brood frames. You want to be able to have hives that produce honey really well. But they're not the best at, wintering New England winters. They're not always the best at um, being resistant to mites and other things as well. They're just a
Okay.
very good, like standard stock. However, in those early days, we were very particular. My dad really loved Carniolans and Buckfast. Um, we got rid of our Russians. They just kept one of the traits of the Russian bees. It's like their stock will tend to, they call it like the Sark complex, where they'll keep replacing the queen over and over again. And that's just, it's a lot of swarming and it can be a kind of a pain in the butt to deal with. But they do have, related resistances to varroa mites and some other issues as well. But Carniolans, we like them because they're good for overwintering, and we used to overwinter here. And then Buckfast is because they're a fairly resistant breed, but also at the same time they're good for honey production. So for us right now with our stock, we have a mixed stock, right? We have Italian, we have Buckfast, we have Carniolan, and we'll take stock from other breeders. So we'll have breeder queens from folks like Mike Palmer, who's a longtime friend of ours. He's been a champion of all forms of natural and organic forms of beekeeping for decades. And what we'll do is it's called grafting. Grafting is the process of taking queen cells, or not queen cells, I apologize. Freshly laid like eggs and larvae at the right stage. We have like a specialized grafting tool. Do I have one in the office in front of me right now? I do not. And what we would do is put them on these specialized frames. I'm just going to grab a ruler here just to show you. So we have these specialized frames with these single bars. So each frame, instead of like a whole frame of honeycomb, it to be several bars like just like this. And along it is all these little spacings for these small little plastic cups. And the plastic cup dimensions are that of what a queen cell would be, right? And so replacing these grafted larvae into those cells with royal jelly, and we'll pull the queen from that colony that we're putting this into, and those bees will create a bunch of new virgin queens, right? That will then place in what's called mating nukes. And that mating yard will have all these different stocks there and just have a healthy population of bees. So when those queens hatched out on a mating flights, they would hopefully have good mating, good mating and be healthy and ready for introduction into our bee yards, right?
Wow.
Into us making splits. So our stock is mixed. So every so often, we'll sometimes, if we're like, oh, we're having some weak queens over here, we'll do requeening by bringing in other queen stock from other breeders and other beekeepers to keep our own stock diverse, but also strong. So we do all our own queens as well.
Excellent. Wow. So,
Sorry, a little scientific.
no, no. um, you know, two things. One, we constantly hear that with all the pesticides and everything going on in the environment, we're hurting the bees. Just give me your perspective on all of that. And that's one question I have. And then I do have another question about, we're taking honey from these hives, for like, when's too much and too little? Like, these
That's
are
the
things
thing.
that always
Yeah.
come up that I think about a lot. And, you hear things, but I don't know what always is the truth. So you're the expert. Tell me.
All right, so first let's start with pesticides, and I'm going to start with saying this. I don't have any degree in pesticide management or ties to any major uh, biochemical companies or anything along those lines. I'm just a farmer. This opinion is my own, right? So
Yep.
I like to clarify that
No
before I start making
problem.
comments on.
Absolutely. I know.
I know it can be a really difficult and touchy subject for a lot of folks, especially folks who are focused on healthy foods, organic foods, pesticide-free, chemical-free foods. And for me, in my perspective, I understand that chemical uses, pesticide uses, even organic and acids and stuff like that for treatments for orchards is important. Pest management is important. Otherwise, we won't have the food that we have. Um, And so what we see, right, is we can get our pollen and honey tested for traces of chemicals and other or non, non-honey related compounds. And what we focus on is working with farmers who are one using either organic style treatments, or if they're treating their crops, they're doing it in different ways, right? So one issue when we were first starting out, we didn't always have the I wouldn't say the backbone, but the ability to say, hey, if you guys are going to have our bees there, you guys have to do this, right? We have that now with our relationship. So, for instance, I see is back in the day, I remember early days where we would take good heavy losses from pesticide usage, and it all depends on the farmer, right? And so there's folks who would do what's called day spraying, where they're spraying their crops during the day, on open bloom. And on a warm day, open bloom, and you're spraying your crops, the bees are out there in the field and there it's a direct kill. So you're just killing thousands of bees in a moment, right?
Wow.
And so there's not much we can do there. However, you've seen if it's an evening time and they're spraying at night and our bees are there, it's not as much as a direct kill, right? It's not a direct hit. It's not a whop, but there's still some loss. And then there's also now we have what's like the big keyword was neonicotinoids, which is like kind of a sublethal exposure over time. And there's still a lot more research going into that, right? And I can't be the one because also some of it is there's a lot of different sides, right? A lot of
Right.
different money
Right.
and lobbies.
Yep.
So it's hard for me to say, hey, here's where that's going to make the most impact. That's where we're seeing impact. When if we're not seeing that in our pollen counts per se, we're not seeing it as like an immediate issue. But where I see my stance on pesticides is we work with farmers who either one, don't do day spraying, they'll spray at night. We ask for farmers who will use treatments while we're not there, or before we get there, or after we leave, but usually it's before or at night. And also, we have a preference for folks who are using organic treatments, right? There's still organic compounds that can be used as a quote unquote treatment for the crops to keep them safe, to get put away pests, but they're no less harmful to the bees, right? They're still harmful, right? It's still
Yep.
organic acids and other things like that are still dangerous, right? And so for us, we work with people who are doing it in a manner that they can inform us that we're informed of, that there's a working relationship there that will prevent or at least lessen any damage to the honeybee health and or the quality of our honey and products afterwards. It's also important to say that during that time, that's not necessarily honey production time. That is pollination series. So we won't see as much nectar coming in during that time. So the honey you're eating is not contaminated by those things. The harvest is much later in the year. And same reason when we treat our own bees for varroa mites and other issues and diseases that they're exposed to, we do that after the honey harvest.
Okay.
And we'll actually talk about the honey now in terms of how much is too much and how much is too little to pull away and how we organize it. I'm a very visual person, so we'll probably have to get a
Okay.
picture, some pictures to you at some point.
Yes,
But
please.
so I'm probably to grab things on my desk here to kind of represent things. And so I'm just gonna got this piece of honeycomb. So with a hive, a traditional hive will have what's called like a bottom board, right? And so keep in mind all our hives are palletized, so the pallet is the bottom board. So the
Okay.
bottom board will have one deep and then two deep. So the deeps are the core of the colony. So we'll usually keep two deeps at all times on a colony, unless we're stripping them down to be smaller. But a deep is the core, and so that deep box will have brood, larva, and honey to feed the core of the colony, which is the growth.
Okay.
Now, honeybees, by being beekeepers, we're capitalizing on the nature of the honeybee, which is to be productive and a little greedy. That's okay. We like them like that. So after those toe deeps, we'll put what's called honey stoopers. And these are what's are called mediums. They are a smaller box in the dimensions. The frames are a little smaller. Um, and it allows them, they recognize that space as extra storage. And so sometimes they'll put brood up there, which can be frustratingly annoying for hobby beekeepers out there hearing this. They've all had that experience once or another where they put a medium on top. They're like, oh, the bees will put honey here, and all of a sudden they fill it up with brood, and you're like, ah, come on. And they mix it all up for you. Then you'll put what's called like a queen excluder beneath that to prevent the queens from going up. Sometimes that works for a lot of folks, and we've got hundreds of them. We still do that sometimes, depending on how frustrating the queen is being. Because she can be frustrating.
I was
But
gonna
then
say.
but all that honey we'll typically pull off the colonies, right? And so we'll pull off the mediums. But you always want to make sure with the core of the colony that there's enough there's brood space, but also there's honey space. Now, one thing that
Okay.
can happen is we call it getting plugged up. Sometimes during a really good honey season, like it's a really good nectar flow, and we're not in a certain bee yard frequently enough. And there's one bee yard in particular I'm thinking of when I say this, which is called Sedge Meadow. We nickname all of our bee yards, by the way, so they all have nicknames. Of course,
Okay.
the beehive that we have at Norse Farm, obviously, is called Norse. But for Sedge Meadow, it every year it happens every year where the second deep box is just completely filled with honey. And so oftentimes when we're going over there to put out honey supers to make space, we'll bring our own deep boxes filled with empty frames to pull that honey out to try and keep room for brood. Because
Okay.
sometimes if the bees are really productive and they're like, this is a good honey flow, they will fill up every possible inch of the hive with honey
Oh,
and
wow.
leave no room for the brood. So we try to maintain that. In a 10 frame box, it's perfectly fine to have 2 frames on the edges with honey and then the rest be brood or be working space. If it gets like you got five, 5, 6 frames of honey in there, maybe more, you're losing critical space the bees can use for extra storage or for producing brood. So you want to pull those out a little bit. We always want to have a little extra space for them. Because otherwise, if that top box is that deep box is filled with honey, they might not go up to the other smaller supers on top. There might be focused on all that storage there. So we always like to have what we do is we just manage their space,
Yeah.
and they pay us with honey. So, but we always make sure there's enough on the colony because if you don't have enough on the colony, right, and you go into a dearth, you're gonna have starving bees, and then you have to dial back and to go out to put honey out there to feed them, and it becomes like a give and take. You always want to have a buffer, but you don't want to have too much. You just want to make sure they don't get plugged up.
Got it. Okay. When you're looking to place bees at a farm or on some type of property, is there an ideal placement that you're looking for? Like I'm thinking about Nurse Farm, like where, is there just certain placement that you're looking for that's ideal for them?
So with Norse, I think we put our. So I'm trying to think, because keep in mind, this is going back years. We've been going to Norse Farm for years. Right now, where the bees, do you know where the bees are right now when we go to
No,
Norse?
I don't know where the bees are. I'm trying.
So now when we bring the bees back, you'll see them.
Yes.
They kind of go up on top of the hill a little bit, so up the road a little bit, and then to the right, and they get kind of tucked in behind. It looks like a bunch of firewood that's always over there. It's like
I
some stacks of dirt. You know what I'm
okay.
talking about?
Yep,
Right
I
up in that
think I
little
know
corner.
where.
Okay,
Yes.
so it's
Yep.
up and then to the right.
Okay.
Um, in previous years, we've had them in the blueberry orchards, and then there's been one spot right off the road. Um, so down towards the blueberries, take a right. It's kind of like a jutted up hill and just a right again up along the rock wall where we used to tuck the bees in as well. And so it really depends on one, the farmer in some ways, right? It also depends on how long we're there for. And so with Norse in particular, we started pulling them out of the blueberries because John was like, "Oh, I want to do U pick," and it's kind of hard to have the bees right there for U
Yeah.
pick, especially if the bees are a little temperamental. And there's been years where John's like, "They are really nasty this year," so we would move them somewhere else at
Yeah.
night, or just
Yeah.
put them somewhere else in general, right? We try to have the bees out of sight but present.
Right.
But one thing we also look for like a natural location is a source of water, right? We want to make sure there's a nearby source of water for the bees because bees drink water. We want to look for a good area where it's not too windy, but also we want a lot of sun. We want
Okay.
sun for a majority of the day. We want those bees woken up and we want them active. Sunlight really gets them going, especially that first morning light. Especially so from first morning to late afternoon, having that all be direct sunlight is wonderful. So we're looking for those things as well, and also just out of sight. We like to tuck our beehives and colonies and field locations out of sight and out of mind. Um, One, to prevent, sometimes over the years, we've had issues with vandalism, theft, what have you. And so sometimes we have to find those places that are kind of hidden and tucked away. And that's what we'll have to do. But
Has that
also,
become more of an issue, vandalism? I mean, you said you're
it's
tracking them now, but still,
we always it's always been like a thing. It's always something we think about, right? It's like, hey, where can we tuck the bees in a little bit, right? Where
okay.
we like to find those kinds of secluded areas that no one's really going to come across. And then yes, we have signage and stuff like that, but it's just we've always been that way. It's, hey, let's tuck them in. There's some areas where we can't really do that, where we have the bees right out in the open and in forest, but those are areas that are you tend to see people who are more like, oh, the bees are there. That's wonderful, right? And you know. Some of our longest lasting areas are in Concord, right? Concord, Massachusetts has a lot of our colonies. I
Okay.
think at one point we've had three major bee yards in Concord at any given time, with very, very sizable amounts of honeybees in that area. And the honey out of there is wonderful too. Um, we've worked with a number of different organizations, farms, but also private landowners who are like, hey, you can pay me in honey and it's all good from there. And so
Yeah.
we have a lot of different agreements and long standing. Massachusetts, we've been here for a long time, so we have a lot of long standing agreements. So for
That's
us,
great.
I remember another farm. I'll just mention another farm that comes to mind because we've been there for so long is Landsake over in Weston.
Okay.
Um, with them, I remember we've had, I think, three or four different locations for the honeybees. And that was before they started. Once again, we moved the bees because people, right? They're like, hey, the people are coming over for U-Pick. Oh, they're doing classes. Oh, they're doing, because they're a nonprofit and
Yeah.
doing all this other stuff. We're like, well, we got to move the bees out of here, move them to this other part of the farm. And then they're like, oh, our tractors kind of roll through there and then they get all pissed off with the dirt and dust and come after us. So we moved one more time to the other part of the area. And now they're fine there, right? And then we moved them again on that side. And so we moved them twice in the other
Yeah.
location. But no, just moved them once. We moved from one side of the greenhouses to the back corner. So it's all about trying to keep the bees a little bit out of the way because sometimes they can be temperamental. They are a creature that does sting. They
Yep.
can be a little aggressive some years. Some years they can be really nasty. There's no help in that. I mean, I have some years where they would just like, you open the truck door. Well, actually, before you even pull in, there's on the truck, and you're like, oh, here we go. They just want you. They're like, oh, we want to just give you some hugs and kisses, but there's no hugs and kisses. This is a different kind of love. They want to make your heart beat a little faster, you know? And you can hear it in the tone of their buzzing, but it's,
That's interesting. You can.
oh yeah, you can
Well, I'm
tell. You
sure
can tell.
you probably, but that's
You
crazy.
know when you're gonna get stung. Like it's not a surprise. Like sometimes it's a surprise, but like you can hear the bees. You're like, oh, they're gonna sting me when I pull this veil off when I get in the truck. Like I'm gonna get stung. Like it's their behavior. It's very
Oh
like
man.
for me. I remember. I think the funniest moment of knowing I'm about to get stung but not understanding why is a few years ago. My wife and I were about to go on our first vacation. We're in the heart of Boston. We're in Dorchester, and I see a bee coming right at me, coming down from a bee line. And I'm like, oh, that's a bee. And in my head, it's like, that's a bee and it's going to sting. It's going to hit me. And I'm like, well, no, there's no bees here. Like, I'm in the middle of Dorchester. I'm not getting stung in the neck. And then boom, I get stung in the neck. And I'm like, I knew that was going to happen. And I'm frustrated that I didn't do anything to stop it. Because my mind's like, oh, that's a bee. And I'm about to get stung right now. And it's like, boom, got stung right in the neck. And my wife was laughing because now I have this welt on the side of my neck because she got me like right in the vein.
Oh,
And it was funny. It didn't hurt. It was just like, I'm frustrated that I let that happen. That was funny. But when you're getting stung, you can tell right away. But to finish my thought, I almost forgot one thing about seeking out bee yards. Is one, I talked about the sun, I talked about the source of water, but also forage. We're looking
okay.
for areas where if it's all just woodlands, that's not forage. We want open
Right.
pastures. We want fields. We want to see what wildflowers are going to be blossoming and growing in that area for the duration of the season, not just one part, but what the duration is. We're also looking for monofloral honeys that we use as really good crops, right? For us, I think you've seen some of our products where we have specialized monofloral honeys. The big ones being basswood, Japanese knotweed, black locust, and clethra. Some of those names
Wow.
I've said are the gardener's nightmare. Some of them are invasive species of plants, and that's okay. Honeybees love all plants for the most part, as long as they produce nectar and pollen and are fragrant. And those plants and wildflowers produce exceptional honeys that taste absolutely remarkable. So, of course, we're going to pursue them in terms of producing a crop off of them. I do not propagate those crops. So for those who sent me angry letters and saying, how dare you propagate and plant Japanese knotweed, I do not plant Japanese knotweed or invasive species of plant. I just look for sources in areas where they're prevalent.
Okay.
But to make that clarification for folks out there.
So let me just back up one second. So like in Georgia, for example, you're going to have different growth. So I guess first, or where are you in Georgia? Like what part of Georgia?
We're in let me pull this up. We're in Hortense, Atkinson County areas. We're right near, I would say we're not too far from the Okefenokee. Um, It's
So
it's
did
a nice little
you
area.
select that area because of a specific reason? Like, is it growing certain things that you're looking for?
That's actually just where we kind of settled. So
Okay.
I remember our first steps into Georgia. It was, my dad had reached out on online forums and found people who were like, "Hey, you can put your bees here," and that's how we started it, right?
Okay.
Which was getting our feet wet and finding people, connecting with people on forums down in Georgia who were agricultural adjacent or supportive of bees or related to the beekeeping industry in some way, shape, or way or form, and going down that way.
Okay.
Um, and that's kind of how we expanded downwards. And how we found the farm we're on now is while we kept going down there, we made friends with other commercial beekeepers up and down the East Coast. And they talked about areas and lands where they were, and they're like, "Hey, this area over here, you could probably fit
Right.
in, and you should start looking for land over there." And that's what we started doing, is knocking on doors and saying, shit, handing a jar of honey and saying, "Hey, we're beekeepers from the north. We're looking for a place to put our bees, and do you know any land that's for sale?" And we bought our farm. Wow, ooh, we bought our property. I want to say almost in 2012. That
Okay.
was right. I was a freshman in college at the time. And I remember the first few months were rough. I remember we were living out of a camper and we were just building on the land, cleaning it. The land was bad. I think it was 240 tires. It was like a
Ugh.
big cleanup project. We had the EPA helped us.
Oh, wow.
There
That's
was like,
serious.
oh yeah, there was a lot that went into the land, and now it's completely transformed.
Wow.
There's multiple buildings. There's housing for our employees that live down there.
Wow.
And it's just a really beautiful acreage, and lots and lots
That's
of bees.
terrific.
And so we transformed that land there, and then we spread out to a lot of other bee yards in the area, which allows us to one, maintain the
Yeah.
health of the colonies. There's just so much that has come out of Georgia. But the journey down there and getting set up was a really long and difficult process. It was very, very difficult.
Probably a
Um,
lot of lessons learned too.
oh yeah, a lot of lessons learned about working with all different cultures of folks.
Yes.
But also, I would say that going to New York was much easier.
And what part of New York is it in?
We're based out of Malone, New York. That's where we're based out of. That's where we have
I
some
never
of
know
our
where that is.
operations. That's right on the border.
Okay.
But we're like up in the borderlands. So we would go over to Shazy Orchards and do our apple pollination. We still do some apples up
That's
there,
great.
but we produce a lot of honey up there as well now. And so
That's great.
we do a little bit of pollination, but the main focus is honey production up there for our Northeast harvest, which is also one of our bulk honeys that we sell. And we sell a lot of it.
Excellent. So if I come to your store, what what's the like, but you have your products, obviously. Do you support a lot of education? Like I'm sure like we're having, I'm sure there's a ton of questions that come your way or
There
that come
is.
to whoever's in the store probably gets inundated with questions.
There's a lot of things that we're trying to do and expand on, and it takes a while, right? And so one thing that there's different. So I'll tell you what we do now, and then I'll mention kind of some of the things
Yep.
I want to do in the future.
Okay.
Right now, the most first and foremost, most important thing that we can have any beekeeping store with honey in it is having our own observation hive. So we built it from scratch. It's a double wide, so it's 8 frames total. Two,
Wow.
frames. It's 4 frames in front, 4 frames in back. Very active hive. We love having it. And so the people can come in, see the bees in action. There's a whole wooden chase that goes right at the rooftop, so the kids can go outside. They'll jump on these little stones and look, and you can see the bees flying in and out of the building, which
That's
they love.
great. Oh, I
And the
love
other
that.
thing, the really important thing is we have what's called our bay window going into our extraction room and our honey line packing area. So where we pack our, pack our 8 ounce and 1 pound jars, as well as two 5,000 pound tanks and then some. We've also got our whole extracting array. And for a certain part of the year, people can come in and watch us extract the honey right then and there.
Wow.
Um, when it comes to big educational events, though, we kind of wrap it up in just a few different large events. Sure, we do small private tours. If schools and classes want to book something, we'll do a small private tour inside the extraction room. I'll have like a small honey demo. We'll do a tasting. We'll talk about the machinery and what we do. And we'll show them some of the honey storage that we have because we have, I don't know off the top of my head how many drums of honey I have in the other room. I also got totes, but I've got easily, easily over 100,000 pounds of honey in the room next to me right now. I just forget how many thousands of pounds I have in the other room. I'm not thinking about it right now. I also have more outside, and I have honey everywhere. Um, but during that time of season, we'll host our farmers farms party here in Massachusetts, not Massachusetts, in Holliston, and then I'll throw our harvest party in October, where we actually bring people inside to the honey room, the extraction room, and we'll do tours and we'll actually run a line and show examples of how we extract honey, which people love. And then sometimes we'll do fresh tastings of honey straight from the comb right then and there.
That's
So
terrific.
there's different forms of education we'll do. Just gotta stretch my arm out. One thing that we have been thinking about, and how we do it and implement it will be difficult, is creating a U-shaped rolling tent or a L-shaped rolling tent, emphasis on the rolling, with a double netting. So basically, it'll be a double netted tent with all this kind of mesh over it, to the ground that's weighted, and then have people walk out there, go into one entrance, and then be able to be close up to the bees in our bee yard in the back, and have us be able to do. So that's one thing we want to do education wise. But then also right now going to this year, I'm trying to transfer into things a little more kid friendly, right? And so we're gonna
Okay.
start doing birthday parties, and one thing we want to always make sure is we're offering things that we're big on agritourism, right? And what that means to the community, but
Yes.
also what that means for farming in general, and creating field games and a playground and educational like kids games that also translate to informing them about bees and about
Yes.
where the honey is coming from and how it's made in different ways. And I think that is a really fun, not challenge, but task, and how we
Okay.
can make it creative, fun, but also educational.
Excellent. Just two questions. So your parents' culinary history,
Yeah.
is that integrate? I mean, your mom has created a lot of the products, correct?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And still does, I presume.
She is the queen of our candle room and our skincare rooms. She's also, I like to call her the keystone. So, like how there's an arch bridge has a keystone. It's all made of stones. You pull my mom out, the whole thing falls apart. She's our anchor, she's our keystone. She runs the backbone of the business. She runs a lot of the billing, the accounts, maintaining everything we do on a logistics side. I have somewhat and slowly taken over some facets of that when it comes to our honey deliveries, our all the back end stuff that we'll probably talk about later today, or later on this call. But also, it's just there's a lot that she does to maintain the business and keep it moving
Yeah,
forward.
I'm
Uh,
sure.
but the candles and the skin creams is
Does
her
she have
like
like a recipe book for honey recipes? I mean, since they were so culinary, I could just see something very unique like that.
one day we're probably gonna have to come out with something.
I
Right?
think you should.
We are probably gonna come out with something honey related because I just to give you a piece of how much honey I consume. I used to eat a lot of honey. I've cut back a significant amount because of health. I'm getting older, and my body doesn't, metabolize things as much as I should. And although I don't drink anymore and I'm sober now, I have a 30-man-year-old body that it looks it's what's called a dad bod. It's not exactly a swimsuit model. I'm not Calvin Klein by any means. I'm just more like what. Danny DeVito-ish, but with full head of hair. So
And red
I've got
hair.
yeah, I got the Chris Pratt body on Parks and Rec. That's my go-to. I'm not Chris Pratt, the Avenger, by any means.
That's
But
so funny.
I used to consume at least like 2 pounds of honey a week. No, no kidding. But now I want to say I'm close to like it's probably a pound of honey a week for me. I can't have my coffee without honey in it. I have two, three coffees a day, and those are very healthy spoonfuls of honey I'm putting in there. I don't use white sugar. I use honey in my water. So I'll put lemon, salt, and honey in my water bottles. It's a really good natural
Yep.
uh, like energy drink. I do the same thing with cooking. We cook with honey in my household. But also during the season here on the farm, we make honey lemonade. We make honey.
Oh,
This year
nice.
I'm making honey mocktails. I'm making themed like kind of honey sweetened drinks. I'm big on honey using in like a lot of what we do. So it's there's a lot of honey being used here because we have so much honey. So we love using it. And so I guess that's where it's We use it. There's going to have to be a recipe book at some point because we use it
Yes, I
so
was going to
much.
say, I'm sure, especially with your parents' background, like yeah. So is your wife involved in the business?
My wife is not involved in the business yet. She maybe one day will be, but for now, she is. Uh, she has her own business and career. She's wildly successful. She's very supportive of us and me, and so sometimes she'll come up. It's actually, no, here's a story for you. The day my girlfriend, who is my now wife, met my parents. Um, she is from the city. She is a city girl. She has no exposure. She actually never had honey in her life until she met me. And by the way, yes, I did use a honey pickup line on her. I told her she was there. I'm like, "There's no way you're sweeter than my honey," and she goes, "What?" But it worked. All right, I'm married now. I got her, and I kept her. But the first time she met my parents, I told her, "Oh, it's package pickup day." And so you know what a package pickup day is. It's a package of bees where our customers are coming to us to pick up these 3 pound pack, 3 to 5 pounds of bees in a package, where it's four sides of wood, on the sides is mesh, and there's the bees right in the center.
Okay.
And I have a picture. I don't know where it is. I have it like printed out because it's just adorable. It's my girlfriend time. She's looking like super cute. She's got her notebook, and there's just hundreds of bees behind, hundreds of packages behind her. And we're like, why, because I'm like, oh, it's the morning. She's like, oh, I'll come help out. Like, she's like, oh, help out. It'll be fun to meet your parents. And so she was there writing down people's names, checking them off as we're handing them bee packages. And that's how the day she met my parents. Um, and that was just kind of a fun way for her to jump right
I was going
into
to
the
say,
shenanigans of who we are, right? It's just a fun way of what a crazy group of people. And she chose to date me. I mean, she
I was
chose to
going to
stay.
say,
She
then you
chose.
knew. Otherwise, that's a great test.
So she chose to stay there. I don't know why she did that. So she's stuck with me now.
That's
Um,
great, though.
but yeah, she's very supportive of the business, the family, and she's kind of
Good.
grown around it. She's not a big bee fan. She gets terrified of when I bring them home when there's on me when I come home. She's terrified, but she loves the
Yeah.
honey, and I mean, right now I think. I have to bring back. I reuse my own jars because I have my own honey stash over here. Actually, I have a secret stash. All beekeepers have a secret stash of their favorite honeys. I'm no different. I have a whole stash here just for me. Of like I think I've got like 10 cases of honey just for myself. I'm weird. I have my own preferences about what kind of honey I enjoy the most. I like crystallized honey. So
Really?
that's why if you look at my store, we never really sell crystallized honey because I take it and I eat it. And sometimes when there's a lot of it, I go, okay, I'll put a sale out and I'll put some out for some folks. Or if people who know I have a crystallized honey preference, they'll ask if we have any, and I'll usually say yes, and I'll get them some. But like for my
Interesting.
stash, like it's fine. Like if they know to ask, I'll get them some.
What is why? Like, what is,
Why do I like it?
yeah.
It's so easy to deal with. You don't have to make look, I'm gonna grab my honey jar here. It's on my desk. This is so with this honey, look, it's
It's
viscous,
liquid. Yeah. Yep.
you open a jar and then
Yep.
the spoon goes in, you get a little honey on the sides. For me, that bothers the heck out of me. So honey like this, where it's crystallized, this is not my honey. This is like we try some other companies. We like to try and taste test honeys when we travel.
Yep.
It's not going anywhere. And so with this, I can take a spoonful of this and put it in my coffee, no problem. And the main way I consume honey is in my coffee. But if I'm cooking with it, I want something that can drizzle, so I'll use one of my jars. But, I'll pour however much in there. So I just like the crystallized honey texture. I like that. I feel in my head it reminds me of sugar. So I'm kicking out my sugar habit by having it. Um, but when it comes to certain kinds of honeys, like our basswood and our clethra and our Japanese knotweed and our black locust, I'm out of my private stash of black locust, so I can't really talk about it too much. But I like those in a liquid form. Japanese knotweed, when Japanese knotweed honey crystallizes, I hate that, and I have to liquefy it because I don't want it. I don't want to have it in a crystallized form. I just like our wildflower honey. But I love our Northeast Harvest honey crystallized because it's so sweet. And it's so good for as a sugar replacement. So that's like my go-to for my coffees in the morning is my Northeast Harvest. Um, but yeah, I've got like
Excellent.
four empty jars in my house right now that I haven't recycled or reused for my own stash, but I should do that at some point.
I have two questions for you. One, one question. So obviously, it's best to find local honey to
Yeah.
wherever you're living. But if people are shopping at a supermarket, a grocery store, what should they be looking for? Because I know that there's honey coming from all over the world. Some of it's not, may not even be honey, pure
Yeah.
honey. Is there anything that any tips you can give for people to look at when they're looking at a jar or even, I don't know, color, texture? I don't even know what to suggest.
So it's one thing about honey. This is gonna sound, I hate saying this phrase, right? Don't judge a book by its cover. With honey, you can sometimes do that when it comes to taste. Like you have two different colorations, there's going to be a taste difference. Um, but it's all it is when it comes to honey comes from other locations. Honey coming from other countries doesn't necessarily mean it's not honey, right?
Right.
Honey from Brazil and Argentina and Mexico and Canada, it's still more often than not, it's going to be honey. Just maybe taste different, right? If you're having honey come from different parts of the country, it might taste vastly different because there's a lot of clover. Um, I know that some people like clover honey. I can be sometimes partial to it with exemptions, but it's not the best tasting honey. It leaves a taste in the back of my throat. I don't like it, but I can use it for certain sweeteners. Um, and maybe I'm sometimes in the mood for it. But when it comes to finding out real honey, it's all about doing your own research, right? And some of it comes down to labeling laws. So
Hmm.
there's a common thing, what's called packing. Packing is the practice of buying honey from Jen's bees. So Jen Ross's bees, you can buy honey, you can buy honey from her in a bucket, and then that's now your honey, right? And
Right.
then you can now put that in a barrel and then pack it yourself and say, hey, I made this honey in my backyard. And so people will do that. That's the thing. But that's also small scale. That's not really the main issue. It becomes an issue when people are buying thousands of pounds of honey, relabeling it, repacking it. And sometimes there's regulators that will go around and inspect these things. So one thing you look for, I guess you can't always say this is going to work because sometimes people will lie, right? That
Yep.
happens. But for us, what we do is we stand by our word, right? We show one thing that is big for us is transparency. So what we do differently is we try and show our bees. We show all our equipment. That's why we have that bay window to say, hey, you come here and see our extracting array, and we tell you, hey, we have over 3,500 colonies. There's proof in the pudding, I guess you could say, right? Is that the term, proof in the pudding, right? It's you see all the bee boxes in the back of our
Yep.
building. You see all the infrastructure that goes into it, our trucks, all our machinery. You need all that stuff to maintain your bees. If someone's like, oh, I'm selling thousands of pounds of honey a year, and their operation is just like a few tanks and it's a small motorized
Yeah.
extractor, you're like, how many bees do you actually have? Where's all your bee trucks? You have a couple of pig, like, but not everyone can see that. And so with labels, for my label, this one says produced by, right? And sometimes you'll see labels that say packed by or made especially by or made especially for. Those
Huh.
are, I know that seems trivial, but those are
That's interesting.
sometimes companies will actually honestly put their practice on the jar. And that's not always the case, but some will actually do that. Some will say packed for, packed by, made especially for, made especially by. Like there's different verbiage and use, but we always put produced because we are the producers at the end of the day. Um,
Okay.
and we have all the stuff here to prove it. So what we do is we try to just showcase our transparency and show as much as possible, but also just be a reputable brand. But everyone's different. I think it's a tough market out there in terms of what's going on in the food industry as a whole.
Yeah.
It's not just related to honey, and it's for us we are sold in farm stands like Norris, but we also sell in small grocery chains and some larger ones as well,
Yeah.
where the competition is a little different. It's a very different environment.
I'm
So
sure. I'm
it's
sure.
it's it's and it's changed a lot over the years. So as I kind of grew up into the business, what I do now is I do a lot of that now. So I'm our sales guy. I'm our guy on the road, looking at accounts, looking at areas. But also we're not one thing that has not changed about how we sell honey is if someone opened a farm stand across the road from Norris and they're like, oh, we want to carry your honey, we're not going to sell to them because they are sold at Norris right across the street.
Right.
We respectfully look at locations. And if there's too many stores in one area, we're looking at the demographics. We're like, hey, you know what? It'd be unfair to our other stores to sell honey to this one. So either we say, hey, this store reached out to us and asked if we could sell the honey. Should we sell them honey? And we'll check in first before we make a move. If it's just we feel like if it's like it's medium, but more often than not, if it's like right there, we're not going to sell honey. It's like, sorry, we can't just oversaturate an area because that doesn't help out anyone.
Right.
Because then we lose sales at your shop, we lose sales at their
Yep.
shop. It's split. Does nobody wins. I'd rather compete against someone else's shelf of their other honey versus our honey at somewhere else, you know? I'd
Yep.
rather compete that way.
So just to wrap this up, what is one thing that you're really looking forward to in the coming year or two about the business? Like what's something that is exciting you?
So I think this is gonna be a funny one. I so there's a lot that we do that I'm always kind of excited for. And I think how we've slowly grown this farm stand to what it is now, it's the perfect mixture of all the things I love. I love retail. I know it sounds crazy to say, but I love meeting our customers and interacting with the people that support us.
Yeah.
I love being a part of the community. That's one of my favorite things. Yeah, as a beekeeper, I grew up in the fields. I grew up by myself out there, to so to speak, right?
Yeah,
But I like people. I know that
I know.
sounds weird to say. I am a people person, and so we are in the process of getting our alcohol license. We're in
Oh,
the process of adding new event spaces here and hosting more events, more tours.
nice.
And there's some really interesting ideas we have for agritourism and classes, but also one-on-one adventures that are very catered, including bee yard tours, and like very unique experiences that I want to be bringing to the farm and to bring it here within the next year or so.
That's
Um,
exciting.
and
That is very exciting.
although I don't drink anymore, really, I've cut back on my beer enjoying. We partner with local breweries to make beers with our honey. We'll be partnering with local mead makers to make mead with our honey. Um, and create a different experience here that's not just for a bar goer, but also for families who can enjoy the outdoor space while having adult refreshments and also, of course, the themed mocktails, all centered around honey. But also, the space is going to be transformed. We're adding in more educational materials in a way that can be digested by all, and creating a space that curates to that. So we want to create one more education around bees, about honey, but also make it family friendly. And so those are things I get really excited about because that's something I'm just always been passionate for. I've always been the one passionate for the people. I do enjoy my time on the
Yeah.
bee yards when it's just me, no music, no nothing, just working by myself. Um, but also I enjoy being out there with the folks who are coming to support us and be the reason why we have all that we have.
Yep.
I think one thing I can always say is, you know, people are like, oh, do you really care about the bees? Oh, you're selling them, or you're doing treatments, or they're like, oh, do you even really care about the bee, right? And I've been asked that before when people are accusatories like, oh, you're folks who are very against honey production and other larger beekeeping practices. I go, of course I love bees, right? There's, oh, well, you're just doing this to them. You'll kill bees. You're a commercial beekeeper. I'm like, everything I have is from bees. And so there's a funny story is I wouldn't have been able to afford college if it wasn't for bees. I would have never have met my wife. It wasn't for my dad's choice to keep bees. I would never have anything that I own, materialistic goods, at the roof over my head if it wasn't for honeybees. So for me, I owe everything to these creatures. Everything. Everything I have is from bees. And so that's what else is there? And so that's
Yeah.
why I enjoy what we do.
Well, I'm excited for you. That sounds like a lot of amazing things coming up. So thank you for taking the time to talk about all this. I
My
can't wait
my
to
pleasure.
visit. I'm going to be
looking
down
forward
there.
to your
Yes,
visit.
I am definitely.
Where are you
gonna
visiting?
visit.
When are you visiting?
Soon. I will be up there. I'll be living up there soon. Mid-April, I'll be living in Westboro. But I'll definitely be up and down beforehand. But I'll be up there. I hope our Agri-Tourist podcast prompts you to think more about where your food comes from, whether it be your vegetables, fruits, meats, and even those sweet treats. Don't forget to subscribe and share this podcast with someone you think may truly benefit from or be inspired by it. Visit us at agri-tourist.com. Until next time.